Padraig O'Donnell fell in love with a young Scottish nurse named Helen while healing in a British hospital during World War I. He had found himself fighting for a country he despised. But despite what you have heard, the enemy of my enemy isn't always your friend. Sometimes a greater evil comes around and starts pushing its weight around, and all those things that you thought were so important go to the wayside, and you must focus on what new. So that's what Patrick did. He focused on being a good soldier. He didn't take long for his obvious talents for bloody mayhem to become evident, and his superiors took notice. Again and again he was put into increasingly dangerous situations, and he always came out smelling like a rose. That is, until the day the rose got trimmed. Poor Padraig had survived numerous dangerous missions, and now he ends up getting shot in the ass by a nervous private fresh off the boat. Padraig was shipped off to Britain for surgery and to recuperate. And sure enough, if his luck wasn't bad enough, the war ends while he is laid up. The date was November 11th, 1918, and while others were celebrating, he was face down having a bullet dug out of his ass that was dangerously close to his spine. The last thing he remembers before surgery was a tune on the radio. His luck would turn around, though. A Mrs. Burnside was his personal nurse during the day, and a Mrs. Eagleton was his nurse at night. Both women would have to fight for the title ugliest woman in Britain, he thought. But at least they were nice. That was until he met them. From then on, they were constant torture. It seemed to be what the doctor had ordered. And that was until 3 weeks before Christmas, when his nurses were removed and replaced by Helen McDonald, a beautiful nurse from the Isle of Skye in Scotland. At first sight of her, he fell in love, and then, with the way she took such gentle care, he fell even further. She spoke to Padraig like a friend. She would keep him distracted with an errant button undone so that he would not feel the pain of having his dressing removed. She knew her feminine ways and how to use them to her benefit. But there was something in her eyes as well. He was growing on her. As the wounded were being shipped off to their prospective homes across the British Isles, the hospital infirmary became increasingly empty, except for poor Padraig. Then, as nursing staff was needed less, it ended up being only poor Helen to care for her only patient. Lying in his bed waiting for Helen to come care for him this day, he turns on the radio.
The snows, they melt the soonest when the winds begin to sing. The corn, it ripens fastest as the frosts are settling in. And when a young bell tells me that my face he'll soon forget, before we part, I'll wage a bet he'll be fain to follow it yet. The snows, they melt the soonest when the winds begin to sing. The swallow flies without a thought as long as it is spring. When springtime goes and winter blows, why gladly you'll be fain with all your pride to follow me across the stormy main. The snows, they were the soonest when the winds begin to sing. The bee that flew in summertime, in winter it will not sting. Seen a woman's anchor melt between the night and morn. It's surely not a harder thing to melt a woman's scorn. So never bid me farewell, for the farewell I receive. You will lie with me, my love, I'll kiss and take your leave. I'll wait here till the woodcock calls and the martin takes its wing, for the snows, they melt the soonest when the winds begin to sing.
Now Padraig was worried for the day of his release. His home had been blown to bits in the Easter Rising, and the woman he loves lives in a tiny island in the north. Essentially, Padraig is homeless, and he has no prospects on what or where to go when he is well. That day, Helen received an urgent telegram and had to leave for her home in the Highlands of Scotland. It would be a treacherous trip, as Mother Nature had graced us with a foot of snow between the hospital and her home. The administrator of the hospital came to Padraig's bedside, to inform him that although he had reassured Helen a nurse would be found for him, there would be no nurse. He was expected to care for himself until after the holidays, but Padraig had other plans. As soon as the administrator had left the room, he went into action. He ransacked the closets, the desks, anything, until he found suitable clothing, shoes, and even money. He packed a bag with bandages, alcohol, and whiskey, in case the alcohol thing confused you. Padraig went in search of his Highland lass to tell her that he loved her. He owed it to himself to see that if that look in her eyes was really what he thought it was. Before long, he was on a train headed out to Perth, headed for Inverness after that, and Dingwall, and then finally his destination of Kyle of Lochish. From there, he should be able to find a boat across the Isle of Skye and find somebody who can help him find his true love. But as plans go, this one was a great plan. But that was until leaving Dingwall, the train was stopped by damaged tracks ahead. The train would have to go in reverse back to Dingwall until repairs could be made. Both Padraig and a man sitting behind him didn't want to lose ground, and they petitioned the conductor to allow them to find alternative transportation to Skye. Fearing for their safety, he refused, as the snow was really coming down now. Knowing he could not stop either of them, he asked a man who brings supplies when they take on water, who told him about the tracks ahead, if he could take them further, and he agreed. Now, as the wagon trudged along, the driver of the wagon sang a Gaelic tune to the disapproval of the gentleman, but it was like music to Padraig's ears.
Rhytyf cael nas ich fiskerag volum hen Pan yon y crane siadri carym gwbyn Gwrosied yn yelan Fat mo hialu man y gwasht Sfamas mwain cher bachastjen Avataf mawn Onach prischel halin Sjöskebag na hardbord rai vashinjetunan Jasht ga utramerian Ach nish chanel man ran Pialagaun en osbosh Svartach luik shin je lechkan And you Katrina ron Shias a jesed en narsje Chimiskade jesklo Maar vrich gial skuleg Boest stevig kluitj Shen jail viken gruaimen Gak swain gachach Skin mi fades nam brochen En kjaun huas wachevain Eten kuan fatte farsing nog goin ishnen gaul Kimi yichts ne herrig meskne njelanen haul Ach get jale njach jalav ga Da hiren emelem til Haviskir lum chwalin Ritun halin mogu Haniel fem gavik yun drain Luch morunya senwar Madevaya tashinye Tachgan garucher fwasht Ach nach sonne mar bayat Rean laien gynnega ve crwrym nio eislen, awn yn ilan y chion.
Now Padraig and the gentleman had boarded the horse-drawn carriage and made their way slowly down the road and left the train to its own problems. But both of them were determined to get to Skye. But the other gentleman was of another class than Padraig, and despite being cordial, it showed, that he was a little stuck up. Along the way, Padraig told him of a wonderful nurse who helped him and who he fell in love with. And the gentleman said nothing. The snow began to fall heavy, and the road became treacherous. The carriage slipped and slided all over, and just as Kyle of Lochish came into view, they ended up in a ditch, stuck. The gentleman got out so determined to continue, he left all but one of his bags and trudged through the knee-deep snow. With a noticeable blood stain on his rear, Padraig didn't hesitate to help the man who was so helpful to him. He unhooked the horses and unloaded and pulled all the luggage off from the carriage, and then pulled the carriage from the ditch, and then loaded the cargo back up before continuing on. It had been several hours, and they were sure that the gentleman had gotten there because Kyle wasn't that farther down the road. But they kept an eye out for him anyhow. And it was a good thing they did, because just before they got to the bridge to the town center where they saw him laying there, just awaiting death along the side of the road. Now Padraig hopped off and realized that he had twisted his ankle. So he made a splint and secured the leg before picking him up and setting him in the carriage. Padraig rode the rest of the way in the exposed back of the carriage wagon so that the gentleman could lie down by the coal lamps in the carriage and get warm. When the wagon reached his depot, he called his assistant to get the doctor. Padraig could not wait any longer, so he grabbed his bag and asked the first person he could find in the street where Helen McDonald lived. He was told to go to the end house and turn left, and the big house on the hill, well, that was her and her family's house. He ran as fast as he could through the deep snow to get to the house on the hill. When he looked up at the big house all lit up like a giant beacon calling out to him, he didn't slow down until he reached the front door. Standing there, he could hear music from the inside and the voices of people having a good time. This door was the last obstacle between him and the woman he loved. And then just then, as he reached out to knock on the door, it opened. A man about his same age was as startled as he was when he laid eyes upon the disheveled traveler. "Who is it?" rings out from behind him in a voice he recognizes instantly. Helen walks up and hugs the man before Padraig, and then her eyes grow large as plums at seeing his face. "Paddy, what on earth are you doing here?" Helen asks. Worried by the way she is hugging and touching the man, he is caught without words. A terminal condition for any Irishman who has kissed a Blarney Stone as much as he has. "Paddy?" Helen asks, worried he is not responding. "Well, come in out of the cold. Apparently you are a friend, isn't he?" the man asks. "I'm in shock. I didn't think I would make it here," Padraig states, shaking off the cold. "Well, thank God you did, and on Christmas Eve. Great timing, Irishman," Helen teases. "I don't want to interrupt your holiday festivities. I wasn't even aware it was Christmas Eve. You and your husband must have plans. I'll just go find an inn or something," Padraig apologizes. "Husband? I could do better than him," Helen says, punching the man in the arm. "That's my brother, who scared the hell out of me. I got a telegram saying he had died 6 months ago, only to find out a few days ago he was alive and well and eating me out of house and home." "That's good," Padraig agrees. "Huh. Why is that good?" Helen asks with a glint in her eye. "Well, because, well, spit it out, man," her brother exclaims while eating a Christmas cracker. Padraig reaches out and takes her hand and draws her into himself. He looks longingly into her eyes and can't help but smile so big his face looks as if it will bust. "I love you, and I want to marry you," he says. Father will never let you marry an Irishman, her brother interrupts. Shut up, you. I love you too, but he is right. My father is particular about the men that court me. Helen explains. Take me to him. I will ask him for your hand right now. I'm no kidding, Helen. I'll do it, Padraig exclaims. I know you would, Paddy, but it's not that simple. Our father is probably in Dingwall or Inverness. The railway was damaged and the train won't be here tonight, Helen explains. He was on that train? So was I. Nothing was going to keep me from seeing you, though, Padraig says. Suddenly, the front door burst open, in a great gust of wind and snow, and a dark figure stands at the door, covered in snow. Instinctively, Padraig grabs the knife on the serving tray and takes a defensive stance. Then the doctor and another man carry in the dark figure. It is the gentleman from the train. Father! Helen screams as she runs to hug him after so long away. Father? Padraig asks her brother. That's dear old Dad for sure, the brother explains. Crap, Padraig replies. The gentleman aboard the train was quiet and never spoke to Padraig the entire time, except when he needed help or was leaving the wagon to fend for himself. So his outlook on whether he will give him her hand in marriage is low, and his outlook to sleep somewhere warm is even lower, it seems. The brother has made it his mission, though, to inform the father who Padraig is and why he was here. Brother can be a real pain in the butt. Padraig knows he has 7 of them. Father, sit down and let me introduce you to Helen's new suitor, Paddy the Irishman, he says, so proud to throw a wrench in his sister's plans. Paddy, is it? The gentleman asks. Yes, sir, Padraig. And you want to marry my daughter? He asks. Yes, sir, I do. You see, Father, Helen tries to speak but is cut off by the striking glance of her father. Can you provide for her? I can. You can't possibly be thinking of allowing this, her brother interrupts. This young man was even more determined to get to Helen than I was, but he didn't leave anybody behind like I did, to my shame. And then when I was injured, he came to my rescue and suffered the cold so I could be warm. Through my travels, I was single-minded, but he chose to be kind, gracious, and helpful, things I was not. Padraig has embodied the Christmas spirit, and because of him, I am here tonight to celebrate with my family. So I would welcome him into this family and bless this union. I don't know of two people who deserve each other more than you two, the gentleman says. Padraig takes Helen's hand, and they sit down together on the couch, and the two men reminisce about the war, Paddy's time in the hospital, and the trip to Skye on this snowy Christmas Eve night. Harold, make yourself useful and play us a song on the pipes, Father McDonald says. Yes, sir.